SNAP 2016 for Excel Level 2, Chapter 2, Project. This is a very tough chapter, as you may notice. I decided to explain everybody how to do the project, even though it's the test, because at the end of the day, my goal is you to understand and learn. So for this project, the first thing that you need to know is to understand what is a name range. A name range is a name that you assign to a cell range. So when you want to use a specific cell range instead of using columns and rows, you will use the assign name. Having said that, the first step is to review the existing name range and delete the name range surgeon. So when you are dealing with name range, you need to click on the Formula ribbon tab, and you're going to find a group name define names. So if you click on the name manager, you're going to see all of the name range that we have set up for this worksheet. So the first one is to delete the surgeon name range. So you need to click on it, then click delete and close. Next step. In cell E24, using the name range days and the COUNTIF function, create a formula to count the numbers of patients whose hospital stay was less than or equal to 7 days. So this is the criteria, this is my condition in order to the COUNTIF function work. So we know, looking at the worksheet, that the amount of days that a patient stayed in the hospital is right in this column. Okay, so my first step is go and click the E24 cell. This is where we need to type in the formula. Then we know by now that every formula starts with the equal sign. And for this exercise, we do know which function we need to use. So when you start typing COUNTIF, you're going to see a drop-down menu of the suggestions of Excel. So here, and this is a shortcut, you can continue typing it. I love shortcuts. So I'm going to double click. So not only the function is going to be inserted in my formula, but it's going to give you the format of the formula to minimize errors. So the next thing that we need to input or to type in is the range. And we know that the range must be what? The days. And we know that the days is this column. But do I remember the name of that range? I do not. So this is where this using formula comes very handy. If you click on it, it's going to show you a list of all of the range that you have named in this worksheet. So just by looking at the name, you know that this is the range that we are looking for. So I'm going to click days. Then you can see that it's going to show you what range is this one. So this is correct. The next thing, a comma. And which is the criteria? Well, the criteria is that I want to count it is if the days is less or equal. So I'm going to type in quotes less than equal 7 closing quotes, and if I'm using parentheses, I have to close it as well and hit enter. So do we really have 9 patients that stay less or equal 7 days? Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So it's working. Let's go to the next step. In the E25, use the name range days and the COUNTIF function. Create a function to count the number of patients whose hospital stay was greater than 7 days. So now, instead of being less or equal 7 days, we're going to go with greater than 7 days. So again, begin your formula with the equal sign and start typing in the function. When you see it in the drop down, you can double click it just to see how the format is going to go. So we know that the range name is days, but again, if you do not remember or if you do not want to type it in, just click use in formula and choose the name range, comma, and then the criteria is, remember, double quote, greater than 7 and close parenthesis. Hit enter and probably is gonna be right. 6 patients. We will see at the end when we check our answer. Okay, next. It gets more interesting. So we are going to create a nested if. That means that we have more than one option, more than one possible result. In the cell F6, that calculates the standard cost. This is what we are going to calculate using the following guidelines. Number 1, if the room type is private, we are going to multiply days by private cost. That is our first option. Option number 2, if the days in the hospital are less than or equal 7, then multiply days by daily short cost. If it doesn't fall into this one, option number 1, or doesn't fall into this one, which is the option number 2, then you are going to multiply days by daily long cost. So you have 3 options. Let's see how it's gonna look. So we need to insert this formula in the F6. I'm gonna go ahead and click right here. Okay. So we know that the function is gonna be if. We're gonna start it with the equal sign. And I start typing the if, and immediately it's gonna show up. I'm gonna double click. Okay, and this is the format. This is just a guide. So our first logical condition is to check if the room is private. So I'm gonna type in room, or if you do not remember the name range, you can always go here and choose room or type it in. But if you do type it in, please remember uppercase and lowercase. That's why I don't like to type it. I just go here and select it. Okay, so if room is equal to private, so I'm going to open the quotes, and private, use all lowercase letters. So I'm gonna be sure that private is all lowercase. I'm gonna close my quote and then comma. So this is gonna be my first option. What I'm supposed to do if the room is private? Well, I'm supposed to multiply days by private cost. So this is what we need to type in now. Days, I'm going to pick it from here, multiply by private cost. Again, I'm going to go here and choose private cost. Okay, and then again, a comma. So this is the first criteria that I am going to ask. Why is the first one? Because SNAP said so. Okay, so the second condition that I'm going to ask, the second logical condition, if the days in the hospital are less than or equal to 7, then I'm going to do this. Okay. So I'm going to start with another if, because I want to ask, open parenthesis, and what is the condition? Well, I have to ask if the days are less or equal to 7. So again, I'm going to click here, choose days, and less than equal 7. That is my second condition, my second option. Remember, then it comes a comma. You just need to follow this format. So what is going to happen if the days are less or equal than 7? Well, I'm going to multiply days by daily shortcuts. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to choose days, asterisk to multiply, and then I'm going to choose from here daily short cost. This is my second condition, and then comma. So what is going to happen if this is not true, which is the first one, and what is going to happen if the second question is not true? Well, then it's going to fall into my third question. If the days in the hospital are greater than 7, then you're going to multiply days by daily long cost. Well, this part you can do it two different ways. You can type in the question, or just type in that if the question number 1 is not true and the question number 2 is not true anyway, is going to multiply days by daily long cost. So I am not, remember, I love the easy way and the shortest way. So I'm not planning to type in the question. I'm just going directly to multiply days by days long cost. And how I'm going to finish? I know that I'm going to finish with parentheses, but how many? Well, I open one here, I open another one here, so I have to end with 2 closing parentheses, and then hit enter. And then copy the formula to the rest, into the range F7 to F20. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to use the autofill, drag it down, and at least I see numbers, so, and it should be correct. This is one of the most complicated if. Why? Because you're not asking only one question, you're asking more than one, and the result is gonna be one option. So remember, going back, if the question number 1 is not true, then it's gonna ask the next question. If the question number 2 is not true, then it's gonna do whatever it says at the very end of my formula. Okay, let's go to the next step. This is to assign a cell range. So I'm going to choose from F6, select from F6 to F20, and I'm going to define a name. And the name is going to be standard cost. So I have to get rid of this underscore. And remember the uppercase S and the uppercase cost. If not, what is going to do? Snap, mark it incorrect. And then click OK. So let's go to the next step. Okay, in the E27, which is right here, using the name range and the average if function, I have to create a formula to calculate the average. That's why I'm going to use the average if the room type is private. If it's not private, I don't want to calculate it. I don't want to take into consideration that number to calculate my average. That's why the function is called average if. You're going to calculate the average if the result of my question is true. So how it's going to look? Well, you know how we are going to start the formula, equal. And then we know the function. We start typing in the function. Once you see it, double click just to see the format of my formula. So the first part is the range, and we know that the range is going to be the room type. Do I remember the name of this cell range? No. So I'm going to go to use formula, and I know that it must be this one. And once you choose it, I know that it is because it has been marked. Okay, then, comma. So what is going to be the criteria? Well, if the room is private, so I'm going to open my double quote, private, lowercase, okay, and then comma again. So what numbers or what cell range I'm going to use to calculate an average? Well, it says to use the average if function to create a formula to calculate the average of the standard cost. So I know that the numbers that I'm going to use is this one. So what is going to come after? Well, I don't remember the name range, but I can always go here and look for it. And close parenthesis and hit enter. Let's go to the next step. In this step, the difference is that in order to calculate average, two conditions must be true or met. So instead of average if, it's going to be ifs, because I'm going to have two conditions, meaning more than one. Okay? And this is going to be in the E28 cell. Okay, let's read it. Using name range and the average if function in the E28, create a formula to calculate the average standard cost if the room is semi-private and the length of the stay is short or equal 7 days. Those are my two conditions, and both of them needs to be true in order to take into consideration that number and to calculate the average. Otherwise, it's going to be left out. So let's start our formula, of course, with the equal sign and start typing the function. Here it is. I'm gonna double click it. Okay, so what I'm going to average? What is gonna be that cell range that has a name because we know it? Well, it's going to be the standard cost because it says so here. And I know that the standard cost, the cell range is right here, but I'm going to look for the name of that cell range, and it's going to be standard cost. Okay, so that is my average range, comma. What is going to be my first criteria? Well, I'm going to ask for the room to be semi-private. So I know that I have to type in room. By now, I got already familiar with the name range. So I'm going to click here, comma. This room is going to be equal semi. Why I know it? Because this is the cell range that I'm using for my first condition. So for this, remember, use the quotes under lowercase and close the quote, comma. What is my second condition? Length of stay is short, meaning that it's going to be less than or equal. And I know that this is the cell range that I need to use. So I'm going to look it up here, and the name for that cell range is days, comma, and the condition, using the quotes of course, is going to be less or equal than 7, and close parenthesis. Could it be that? Let me double check mine. Okay. Average if, standard cost, room equals semi, days, less than or equal 7. Well, it looks like, right? Okay, let's go to the next one. Use the sum if. So you're going to ask for a condition, and then if the condition is true, you're going to add it. Use sum if function and name ranges in cell E30. Create a formula to calculate the sum of the standard cost. This is what I want to add if the room is private. This is my condition. It says use the name range, room, and standard cost. Note, when referring to the room type, private in the formula, all lowercase letters. Okay, so let's go to the E30. I'm going to start it with the equal sign, and I know that the function is sum if. But because it's only one condition, this is my option. If it were more than one condition, it would be this one. Double click. So my first thing is going to be the range, and I know by now that it's going to be room. So I'm going to click here and choose room, and then comma. I'm going to ask if the room is equal what? Private. So quotes, private, close the quotes, and comma. And I'm going to sum or add what? The standard cost. I have to use the name range. So I'm going to pick it from here. I don't want to type it in. And then close parenthesis and hit enter. Yeah, and the last one. Let's go for it. And this is a very important one because the VLOOKUP function, we use it a lot in different businesses. So the VLOOKUP or the age lookup is just a function to look something up in a table and look what is the value that is at the right or at the bottom. But because we're going to use a vertical VLOOKUP, we know that we're going to look up a table and we're going to pick up or use the value that is at the right. The lookup is vertical, but the data that is going to return is at the right, or at the, well, yeah, usually it's at the right. Okay, so the patient payment code classifies each payment standard cost based on the information found in the payment code range, and this range is from I9 to J11, which is here, right here. So we know by now that this is a table. So that means that if a patient standard cost is, for example, 5,000, the payment code is going to be equal A, right? On the other hand, if I have a standard cost for this patient that is, for example, 6,000, is it going to fall here? No, because 6,000 is greater than 5,000. So it's going to fall in the next cell range, meaning here. So it's going to be, the payment code is going to be equal B. So that kind of lookup, we can do it visually, but we have the VLOOKUP in Excel, so it can do it for us. So what we're going to do with the VLOOKUP is check the standard cost here for every patient and put in here the payment code based on this array or table. Okay, so let's see. And this is only visually. This patient, Bob, the standard cost is $35,280. So what you think is going to be the payment code? Well, of course, it's going to be the C. It's going to fall here. And so on. But because we can do it automatically with Excel, why to do it manually? So that's what we are going to do here. So for example, if the standard cost is less than 10,000 but greater than 4,999, the payment code is going to be the A. You see? It's going to fall into this option or this condition. Using the VLOOKUP function and name ranges in the cell G6, right here, create a formula to look up the payment code based on what? On the standard cost of the patient. So let's go and click here and let's start. We know by now that we're going to start with the equal sign, and the function is going to be VLOOKUP. It's going to show immediately, and then I'm going to double click it. Okay, so let's see. What is going to be the lookup value? Well, the lookup value, what I have to look? I have to look the standard cost. And this is right here. So, of course, we're going to use the name range. I'm going to go here and choose standard cost. That is the first part. Then, comma. Well, what is the name of my table or for this range? You see, table array. So I have to figure out what is the name. Of course, we can go always here, and we know that is the payment code. So we're almost done, comma. This part where it says column index number. So this is a table, as I mentioned before. A table has an index, and the index for a VLOOKUP is going to be the column number. So this one would be the index 1, and this one would be the index 2. So what VLOOKUP is going to do is going to take the standard cost, is going to look up the table in the index 1, and it's going to return what? Index 2. Because at the end of the day, what I want to put here is my payment code. And this is represented by the column number 2. So I'm going to put here 2. and close parenthesis and hit enter. And let's check if the first one is correct. So Sarah has a standard cost of $14,700. So if we go to the table, is this amount greater than 5,000? Yes, it is. So it's not going to be payment code A. And I know that it's going to go to the next level. Okay, so 14,700. It's greater than 10,000. Yes, it's greater than 10,000. Is it less than 20,000? Yes. So if it is less than, it's going to fall here. It's not going to fall in the payment C. It's going to fall right here. So the payment code is equal to B. So it's correct. So what we have left is copy the VLOOK function. And let's take a look to the second one. Remember that we look up Bob is 35,000. It returns C and is correct because 35,000 is greater than the 20,000. And this is the last value that we have anyway. Let's check the third one. We check one for the B, one for the C. Let's check the third one. So Paula, the standard cost is 6,500. Is it less than 5,000? No, it is greater than. Okay, let's ask for the second condition. If it is less than 10,000, yes, it's less than. So I know that the index that I'm going to use is this first one. Okay. And then you need to deselect the range. You can click anywhere and save your workbook. And cross your fingers and check the answer. Yeah, it's correct. So I hope this video helps. If you have any question, just let me know. You know